Okay, Lorraine, you can go ahead.
So, good afternoon and welcome to the City of St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Thursday, November 30th, 2023. The time is now 2:32, and seeing as we have quorum, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm going to begin with the recognition of the traditional territories. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. We will now move to today's agenda. Do
Not
we have
actually in the meeting yet, so our turn.
Nope. Sorry. We will now move to today's agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
The only one that I would know of is the one you just mentioned about the Welland Canal Task Force. So if you want to give an update on that, we can tack that on at the end.
Sure, just a brief update.
Sounds good. We'll make that, I guess, 7.5.
Okay, sounds good. So I think we're ready for a motion to approve the agenda. Would anyone like to make that motion? Robert?
Happy to.
Good. So it will be moved by Robert that the SCHAC adopt the agenda for this SHAC meeting. That sounds kind of awkward. Held on Thursday, November 30th, 2023, as amended. Copies have been previously distributed.
So I think we just need a quick vote on that.
Sure.
All in favor? All right, that carries.
Okay. So can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting? Were there any questions or comments or changes that you want to suggest, Robert?
I noticed 7.2 regarding 25 Henrietta Street. It's numerous mentions of 33 Main Street, Port Dalhousie. In actuality, is 333 Main Street.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks for catching that.
Thanks, Robert. Gail, did you have some too?
Yes, it's on the same thing. And if you would scroll down through to 7.2.25, I was going to also mention it is 333 Main Street. There's one other small thing, and then there's something a little larger I'd like to, I hope can change. And I wish Brian and Carlos were here because they weren't. And so I'll have to ask Holly to help on that. In the there was a paragraph on the second page of that starts with Holly Washuta talking about the Main Street house in Port Dalhousie that we held. I don't know how many years ago, Holly. It was probably, well, it was when Kevin Blazowski was still the heritage planner. It's that long ago. There is in that paragraph, which starts with Holly Washuta, it says that I am of the opinion that the public would be more supportive of the proposal for 25 Henrietta. We didn't have a full discussion when this was raised last time, and for those of you that weren't there, it was a very hot and heavy meeting. The Better Neighborhoods people, Glenn Barr was the head person on that, and Tony Romanko was there as well, as along with their developer, whose name I will not mention. It was a heavily discussed meeting because they did not want to move the heritage home at all. The group wanted to build in front of it all the way to Main Street itself, with I think between 10 to a dozen townhouses and little roadways in completely obliterating the front of the heritage home. It also had a second structure on the side called the Widow's House, which was related to the family of the original owners. And there was a huge line of cedar trees all the way down the long driveway. This is a very large property to behind the home. And the developer had gone ahead and taken down all of the trees, including those on public property, right at the corner. And at that meeting, which was very, as I say, heavily discussed, the senior planner at the time, his name is Jim Riddle, was very upset that the developer had taken down all these trees without due process. And so when I make the comment that, and Carlos, by the way, also commented that the heritage homes normally aren't moved, and they weren't intending to do anything with this. And we knew that the neighborhood would be just outraged with all of these homes built in front of 333 Main Street. As it turns out, it all fell apart. And so the home still stands there, the huge property in front, and the developer himself, I guess, Better Neighborhoods backed off completely, but the developer himself did end up building 3 homes behind the heritage home facing another street, not Main Street itself. And if that discussion had been had, my comment that the public at Henrietta Street would be more happy. They weren't talking about moving that home. They were talking about building absolutely in front of it and all around it. And they also took down the widow's house, which we were very much hoping they would not do. It was a perfectly good standalone house for someone else. So is it possible, and it's awfully difficult, I know, for Alex Bladowski to keep on top of all this sort of extraneous talk, which hasn't really been on the agenda, but is it possible you could just remove my statement? Because it doesn't have, without the context, it doesn't make any sense.
So that's the one at the, Gail, that's the one at the bottom of the page where it says Gail.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The very bottom, that sentence there.
Yeah, I just like that gone, because the people from Henrietta neighborhood are going to think, what they didn't understand. Nobody knew what Holly and I know, and Carlos and Brian. Holly, do you have anything to say about this?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it just makes it sound a little bit more confusing.
Yeah.
I think why I've even brought it up was just to show that how that home, we wanted it to remain in place and not be taken down.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think we should remove that and change that.
Remove my statement entirely. Yeah, I would appreciate that, because it makes no sense without you all knowing how difficult this meeting was. I mean, Jim Riddle really was just appalled that all those trees had been taken down, and the whole plan was.
So through the chair, so I can remove that paragraph completely if we want that removed. I feel like it was part of the conversation, so that's why it's in there. Or I can massage the paragraph and add a little bit more context. And what I could do after this meeting, tomorrow I'll work on that paragraph, and I could circulate that paragraph to the group and see if everybody's in agreement with what I've put. But I don't know if we'll be able to kind of finesse the language at this point during this meeting, but I'm happy to take a look at it afterwards.
So my part might be obliterated, I hope, completely, but that's up to you. There is one other small thing on that, and if you just scroll down, you'll see at some point Brian asks if there are any more questions for Adrian. It's in the second to last penultimate paragraph, and Adrian wasn't even part of this discussion.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, that was just a typo. Or a wrong name. That's all.
He probably just said, does anyone have any more questions, or something. So that you have to get Adrian out of there.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be Sydney Di Tommaso, who is the consultant for it. So we accidentally had Adrian instead of Sydney in there. So I'll make sure that's changed.
Okay, and so tomorrow or whenever you'll let us know how this whole 333 Main Street, which is throughout that discussion.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I'll because I want to make sure that it's your minutes, right? So if the committee's in agreement on it, then I'll make sure that it's tweaked in a way that everybody's happy with, and
Thank you
we'll go
so
from there.
much. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yep.
So James, should we not bother approving the minutes at this time and wait until they're corrected?
Yeah, that's fine. We can always approve them at the next meeting if we wanted to.
That's what I'm hoping to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Gail. Were there
You're
any
welcome.
other questions or comments or changes requested? Okay, so seeing none, we'll move on to the next then, James. And then you will circulate that to us later?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm going to move on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for today's meeting? Anybody have any? No? Okay, seeing none, I think we can move on to our business of 7.1, the grant application for 29 Edmund Street. And it's regarding a grant application, as I said, and the owners Gregory and Lisa Betts are here to present their application. So Gregory and Lisa, I saw you earlier. Oh, there you are. Okay. Yes, can you walk us through this?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for welcoming us back to the committee. It's great to be here and to see you all again. There's our house right there. This is the Thompson House on Edmund Street, built in 1870. This application, you might remember it as a follow-up to the conversation that was started last year, where we've recognized that because of a great deal of damage that we were getting inside the house to some of the heritage features we have in the parlor right over there. There's some original crown molding that was getting severely damaged by water that was coming in, and it took us years to locate where the source of the water was. And last year we put in to get the ice shield done, and we got that done, and we waited 6 months or so, and it worked. That's the good news. And so now we've been doing some internal repairs on that one, and it was exactly what the problem was. We've solved it. That's great. Now we're turning to on the soffits and fascia on the exterior. You can see I don't know, what do you call them? The wooden. Yeah, there's the.
Yeah, it's the original wood.
The original wood. There's
and it's rotten.
It's rotten from all the water damage that we were getting. So this is all wood, and we want to keep it wood, of course, because that's part of the heritage charm of the place. But so now we need to do that work, and that's what this application pertains to. So we've had an estimate. We put in an estimate with the same group that did the previous work. We like them because they solved the problem.
Thank you. You were here fairly recently, weren't you? When was that you were here?
That was over a year ago. It
was it over a year? Oh, okay, it was over a year. Okay, thanks. Are there any questions from committee members? James, do we have the estimate? I didn't see it. I don't think.
It is.
Of course, we're terrified when you look at incidents, the holes like that. We're terrified of the vermin that can get in. We haven't had vermin in a few years because we've been patching up most of the holes, but pests have gotten in historically, and we're a little bit terrified seeing those holes close up.
It's only a matter of time.
It's only a matter of time.
Well, it's great news that the previous repairs worked. Now
Yes.
let's see. Thank you, James, for the estimate there.
Yeah, so the total is $67.80, and so the committee can offer up to 50%, which would be $33.90.
Okay, are there any questions from committee members for Gregory and Lisa Betts or James? I'm not seeing any questions. Any at all? No? Okay, so if seeing no questions, can I have a motion then?
Yeah, just one
Andrew?
second.
I think we should approve it. So I move that we approve the grant application.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, so the motion would be, sorry, I don't have it typed up in front of me, unfortunately, that the SCHAC recommends approval of a heritage property grant for $3,390 for 29 Edmund Street.
I agree.
So we just need a vote then. So all in favor? Okay, so that passes.
Okay,
Great, Gregory. So I'll be in touch tomorrow and we can talk about next steps.
okay. Thanks,
Fantastic.
Gregory
Thank
and
you so
Lisa.
much, Yeah,
Thank you.
That's really wonderful.
you. Good luck.
If I'm allowed to indulge 1 second, I can. I'd also like to mention that I mentioned last time that I was working on a novel pertaining to the house, and that novel has reached draft stage and is now being looked at by an editor right now. So
How exciting. You'll have to share it with us when it's published. Tell us
I
more about
absolutely
it.
will, and I'll acknowledge the committee as well too for all the
Oh, thank you. How
Thank you.
exciting.
work.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks everybody.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So our next presentation is concerns item 7.2, and that's the grant application for 3 to 5 College Street. The owner, Mike Mazzolino, am I pronouncing that correctly, Mr. Mazzolino?
Yep.
Is here to present their application. So would you go ahead?
Yeah, most certainly. Okay, so the building, I had some notes years ago. Robin and Brian and I did a little bit of homework on it. And built in 1890. It was the Newman family that owned it, and it was built and then rebuilt into 6 units for the workers. I don't know, I want to say at least 10 years ago, when I think the grant was $2,000, we acquired funding, partial funding, the $2,000, which we applied towards replacement of windows. And they were a close match to what was there, wood grain finish and the same grills. Everything was fit to specifically to the size of what was there. So they're pretty close to an exact match. And anyhow, we did had to do soffits at one point, and at that point we restored the and kept intact all of the plaster, including the plaster cove moldings, which are seen. So most recently, we've been looking at the deteriorated steps. Now, essentially, 2 of them, the 2 in the center, need to be done, as well as the I think they're about 25-foot wide concrete steps. So you got 2 walkways and 2 steps. And then on the other end, there's also 2 other ones that are not as bad, but I think in keeping with what the next door neighbor has done as well, it's best to do all of them at once. And so we've been looking at that, and it's a pretty significant expense. So we initially had plans to sort of reduce it to 1, just obviously with interest rates and so on, budget constraints and so on. We were going to modify it so it was 1 wider one as opposed to 2 narrower ones as we currently have. And in the end, we, after talking to different contractors and different individuals about what's the best approach here, we felt like keeping it as close to exactly as it is the right thing to do. A couple of neighbors had commented as well. And we had those conversations, and this is what we've come up with. So essentially, what we're asking for is grant funding to offset the cost to basically remove and form and pour exactly as they are in a concrete finish. The only thing that might change is the tolerances, where we need to talk to building services, because the steps are maybe not code compliant. I think they have to be 7 inches, and those are 5 or 6 inches, but that wouldn't really change anything. You just might have a deeper step and a higher step. But outside that, the width would remain the same. The concrete would go back up to the top. The steel railings would be the same, and the width of the steps that walk up to the porch would be the same. And we would do all 4 of them, so everything is an exact match, and also so that it ages together, as opposed to doing some now and some later. That's the goal, if we're able to qualify for the grant. Do you have any questions of me regarding this?
So, Mr. Mazzolino, I have one to start. So it says 3 to 5. Is that what address is this house at?
So
What I meant.
the municipal address is 3-5.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it's a single building. I guess it's a double lot. It's never been severed. Actually, Dan Romanko lives across the road and said it could be, but I don't think we want to change anything. So we're leaving it as it is, but it is a single deeded property. The municipal address happens to be 3-5 College. I think maybe the history is that at one point it was a semi-detached, and then when they converted it to housing for Newman's staff, they 3 and 5 merged and became 3-5. So now it's a sixplex compared to two separately deeded, semi-detached, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
So
And then I have one other
and
question. So is there any way of knowing the date of the concrete? Is there any way of figuring that out?
I don't know. We felt like it was the 1950s, but I don't know how I would find that. I would think that maybe Dennis or Brian might be able to offer some guidance on that, or at least steer us in the right direction as to how to determine that information. But I offhand, I don't know. You know what? I wonder if I went to the Vernon's directory at the library, because at some point historically it would have switched from 2 units to 6 units. So maybe there's some research there that could, but that might be a long shot.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Holly.
It just says 6-unit apartment for sale on your sign. Are you fixing this? Are you trying to fix this up? It's for sale now?
We put it up for sale. It is currently for sale. We haven't we've been doing maintenance as we go, but we haven't even had an inquiry. Actually, the market's kind of tanked, so we were going to pull it off the market, but we did put it up for sale at one point. We're not fixing it up to sell it. We're fixing it up because we're really addressing is the concrete walkways, because they're deteriorated. And so, but is it for sale? Yes. Realistically, we were going to pull it off last week. We'll probably pull it off next week, this week, simply because the market's flat. We haven't even had a single inquiry on it. Having said that, if it did sell, it would sell as the current use, what it is, which is an investment property, because all of our tenants are on leases. So a buyer would simply assume the tenants, and it would continue to operate in the same manner.
Thank you, Maria. Oh, you're on.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mazzolino, for the presentation. Would you be able to tell me how you feel that the repairs to the walkways and steps would be an architectural feature worth preserving?
Certainly. So I think that the building has tremendous curb appeal, and certainly is a historically relevant building. Everything has been preserved since we've owned it, which is about, I want to say, 20 years. So for as long as we've owned it, outside repairs like paint and plaster repairs, literally nothing has changed from the outside. So, again, initially the conversations that contractors had proposed to us was, you don't need all those walkways. And so it's more cost efficient to remove them, shrink the size of the steps. It doesn't need to be that wide, and have one walkway going up. But again, talking to Dan and talking to Betty Lou next door and other people, we feel that the house has symmetry. And so it was the number of pillars, either it's a mirror image from one side to the next, and leaving it as it is allows it to continue to maintain that same look. The other interesting thought, and I should have made a point to jot down the specific addresses. I don't know who the architect was that designed this, but there are a few houses right on Glenridge Avenue that are almost identical architecture. So I can't speak to who the architect was or what the style of architecture is, but there must be some relevance to it, because I know on Glenridge alone, there's two houses. They're not sixplex like that, so it's kind of half the size of what you see there. But the pillars and the loft up above, or not the loft, sorry, but the third half story, it's almost identical. So I just think that you really wouldn't want to. We haven't changed anything. We've left the wood doors intact. The windows have remained identical. The stucco outside paint and repairs have remained identical. So I think that the history means what it was. I don't know what it was 100 years ago, but we know that that concrete is extremely old. And so for several decades, probably at least half a century, that concrete's been there. And that's why we talked about restoring it exactly as you see it. And the only thing that would be different is that the concrete would be new. And of course, concrete and old concrete, new and versus old, doesn't always look the same. But we've also talked to contractors about, which wasn't worked into the quote yet, but they can do things to give it an aged look. They can add color to it. They can do a slight aggregate exposure, not a full exposure like they did next door, but something where they can apply a release, and when they rinse the release, it exposes a little bit of the aggregate, which makes it look aged. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think the short answer is keep it exactly as it is, except safe, and not change anything, not reduce the number of walkways, and preserve the look of the building. It's a beautiful building.
Okay, thank you. I think at some point we need to have James weigh in on this as well, but we have two hands up, so let's go to that first. Gail?
I thought Andrew had his hand up first.
Oh, Andrew? Oh, okay.
I'm just going to say that. Andrew, you had
Andrew?
your hand up first.
I'm always happy to defer to you, Gail. Please.
And I knew that, Gail, so that's why I went to you.
Oh, there you go. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mazzolini. I know you've done a lot of work in the city. I lived in Old Glenridge and the old part for 45 years. And I'd like to know a little bit more. I don't recognize any home. And I mean, I walked for all those years up and down. Could you be more specific as to what addresses, even or odd side, whereabouts you think that there's a matching?
Absolutely. And so when you turn onto Glenridge from Eastchester or Westchester, sorry, and it's right on Glenridge on the left-hand side. Now, again, they're houses. This here is, so this would have been a semi at one point in time, meaning two houses that are attached. And so if you imagine half of this house, and there are two of them. I don't know exactly what the number is, but if you drive by on your way home, you'll see.
I don't live there anymore. I lived there for 45 years. I think you're referring to houses about maybe 5 or 6 in on a bit of a slope. Yes.
Yes.
I just don't see them as even a close match to what you're talking about. But now I know at least which homes you're talking about. I mean, I know those homes like the back of my hand. Okay.
Yeah, there are two that are that I would say are a close match in terms of the front porch is recessed. The second floor overhangs. And then the third floor is recessed with the same roof lines, the same pitch on the roof. And I know because I've actually gone up and knocked on the door years ago. Well, sorry, I know in my opinion they're similar.
Okay.
I actually was so curious. I meant to talk to the property owners, but
okay. I just wanted to know exactly what ones you were talking about. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Gail. Andrew?
But my initial reaction was I was a little bit skeptical as to whether the work would qualify under the grant guidelines. And but to be sure, I took a closer look, and I kind of have a more nuanced opinion of it right now. And it partly stems from what you're talking about. You talked about the idea of consolidating the two walkways into a single walkway, and making the steps at the front of the house more narrow. And when you said that, my heritage sense kind of shuddered a little bit, because I do think doing either one of those things would compromise the look of this house. So that alone says that there's some significance there to those elements. In the simplest of terms, though, for a project to be eligible, it has to relate to the conservation, reconstruction, or restoration of a significant architectural feature. And that's a lot easier in the case of an individually designated property than in a heritage district, because there's no specific bylaw that spells out what that is. But I do think that in a very general sense, at least you can argue that the front steps up to the porch represent a significant architectural feature of this property. If you look at this photo or the fifth photo in the package that was sent to us, it really is quite a striking feature, and that's a significant part of the work. The walkways are connected with that. So my next question was, what does the district plan say about those elements in terms of the 8th Street district? And it says the guidelines say a project should be eligible if it relates to features important to the overall composition of the structure as specified in the district plan. So if you take a closer look at the 8th district's plan, there's a couple of sections that offer more detailed context for this. When it talks about the streetscape, it talks about the objective of the plan being to support and maintain the protection of the urban landscape character and to enhance the character of the streetscape. I think both of those features do in this case. I think if you look at the other houses on the street, you can see that these are features that are characteristic of this street and its role in the district. The district study background report references College Street and says that the street's defined by its consistent streetscape and stylistic similarity, which I think you can also make the argument that maintaining these walkways and not modifying them contributes to the stylistic consistency of the street. And overall, the plan also references that walkways are and pedestrian areas are part of the character of the district as a whole. I don't know if that refers to private walkways or only public walkways, so it's a little bit ambiguous. But I do think that while it is a little bit in a gray area, I think there is a case to be made that properly caring for these elements of this property are in keeping with the objectives and goals of the H district plan. So for that reason, I would be inclined to support it, although I acknowledge it is a bit of a gray area.
Andrew, is that the walkway and the steps? Is that both those elements?
Well, I think the application deals with work related to both of them. I'm not sure how separable they are. I think you can make a stronger case for the steps to the house, up to the porch. I think if it was just that element, it would be a no-brainer to me. I think in terms of the walkways up to the house, it's a little less cut and dried from my perspective only. Although in those cases, you have a contextual element. If you look down the street and see similar walkways on that street, I think that it is characteristic of the street. So that again is one in favor of those elements of the plan from my perspective. And I also cringed a little bit looking at these photos because with winter coming on, these uneven steps would make me very uptight as the owner of an investment property. So I certainly understand the desire to get this done sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any other questions or comments? James, do you want to sort of review the quote for us? Do you have the quote there?
Sure.
I want to see if they're separate or together.
So the entire quote is all in one. It doesn't parse out individual elements, but the total quote is for 14,000, and 12,500 of that is for the work, and then obviously taxes beyond that. Obviously the committee can only go up to $5,000. So anything beyond 10,000 is sort of irrelevant to the committee. I don't know if Mr. Mazzolino knows the price of what each element would cost, and if he's able to provide that, and if it's in the interest of the committee to only support the staircase, or if it would be helpful if those elements were kind of parsed out so it would be better understood. Do you have that information, Michael?
Sorry, I just had a call come in which interrupted me. So are you asking me if I can break down the difference in cost between the steps themselves and the walkways?
Yes, I think so. I think that's what Andrew was sort of hinting at, was he felt that it would be easier to support the staircase right in front of the house. That's kind of more of an architectural and structural element, whereas the walkways, that's kind of a gray area. And Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but yeah. So the idea would be that the quote would maybe only want to cover the staircase, and understanding how much that would cost. So that way the committee maybe would be in favor of providing funds just for that element.
So I
Sure.
think that sorry, Mr. Mosolino, that I wanted to reiterate that was my question as well, because I can see supporting the steps. I think the walkway might be Mr. Mazzolino's responsibility as the owner and sort of landlord of that position, of that house, right? So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. And so I'm just wondering if it is possible, following up on what Andrew said, if it's possible to separate those two costs.
So it could. Now, two comments on that, because initially our plan, we had engaged Joe Jacks and Ontario Concrete Raising, and what they do is they come in and they modify what's there, and so to make it safe and level and compliant with the appropriate codes, and that was rather expensive as well. And that's when we thought, well, geez, if we're going to spend that kind of money, we're better off to redo it, and then it's done, and it's done properly, and there's no issues for many years to come. Now, this price, I don't know what the breakdown is between steps and walkway. I know that the price was heavily discounted on account of the fact that A, it's slow season and they wanted the work, and B, doing the whole job collectively. So if I was going back to them saying, okay, divide the quote and quote me just doing the steps, then I suspect it would be, the overall quote would be more money. But to get an understanding of steps versus the whole walkway, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Thank you.
It has, the whole steps have to come out. I would think maybe it's 50-50. The whole steps have to come out. It's the largest area of concrete. It's got the height and the depth. So it would be a fair amount of meters. It's 25 feet wide, I believe. So I would imagine it's about 50-50, maybe 60-40. But I would have to go back to them and ask them to break down the quote and see if they could do that for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Mazzolino or for James? Okay, is someone willing to make a motion for this?
The only other comment that I would make is, like I said, I've applied for grants twice in the last 15 years. One was the windows, and one was for another property on St. Paul Street. And that's when it was Kevin Blazowski and Mick Mullen was mayor, and Jim Riddle was director of planning. And I think we can show you all the homework that we did relative to the history of the building on that. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, what I say is what I do, and I tend to do it nicer than what was delivered in writing. So I guess what I'm saying on record is that what we do there will be, no corners will be cut. It will be, we will deliver more than we put on paper there. We'll make sure that the railings are identical, that the or reinstated, that the width is identical, that the workmanship, no corners are cut. If there's an opportunity, and if it's something that the committee wants to see, to have the method applied where it's aged a little bit, we'll do that. in the spirit of preserving the integrity of the building, we'll do everything that we can.
Thank you for that reassurance. Rachel, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mazzolino. I appreciate you taking the time. You know, I've been listening intently to what you've said. And I'd like to also thank Andrew for looking into the Yates Heritage District guidelines and presenting that to the committee. I had a brief skim of them, but nowhere near the work you did. So I do appreciate that. I was having a hard time with this one because I only looked at the designated property grant guidelines, and I really had a hard time justifying the walkways. I can't see how they would fit into the guidelines at all. It would be very, very gray. So but I appreciate that going back to the contractor and getting a new quote, and I can understand that contractors would think that you're just going to get one element repaired and not the other, and therefore increase the cost. I can appreciate that as well. But I would have a difficult time like justifying the repair. I understand the streetscape, but if we go by the letter of the guidelines, I really can't see it, you know, granting this money. And the other thing or awarding this grant rather. And the other thing I'm slightly concerned about is the precedent setting that this might have. So I don't know how much we rely on precedent or past grant applications that we've given, but I think that's something we should take into consideration. I don't know if something has been given like this before. I'm relatively new to this committee, so I don't know if we have awarded grants in the past for stairs or walkways or that kind of thing. But I would err more on the side of caution, and when it comes to this type of grant, just because it really isn't in line, or I have a hard time squaring it with the contents of the guidelines themselves. That is the designated property grant guidelines. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay. Oh, Andrew, do you have another question or comment?
A question for James, and this sort of may help me a little bit, but if the plan involves consolidating those two front walkways into a single one and changing the appearance of the front of the house, is that something that would require a heritage permit?
Through the chair, I'd have to go through. So there's a list of items in the essentially that are deemed permits. So you're allowed to make certain alterations to a property without having to come to the Heritage Committee. And each Heritage District has different ones in terms of how specific they are. So I don't know if walkways and pathways, I don't think they would have to come to the Heritage Committee to make a change to those. I wouldn't want to give you a definitive answer, but if you give me a minute or two, I'd be able to look that up for us. But I just don't know off the top of my head if that's a concern.
Yeah, if you can do that quickly, it might be good, because I think it would be a shame if that happened, honestly. But again, if it's something that could be done without our involvement, then it makes it even harder to make a case for applying the funds to it. If it is something that required a permit, then you could say it would be an argument in the other direction. Now, if the committee wants to look at doing a partial version of it, rather than to save ourselves time and to save the applicant time, if you look at the measurements in the actual application, it looks, in terms of surface area, to be about 50-50. So if we were going to fund the stair part of it, so half of it, that would be $3,500 instead of $5,000. So rather than have Michael have to go back and deal with the contractor and so on, and us potentially have to look at it again, if the committee is leaning in that direction, we could propose that, to offer a grant of $3,500 instead of $5,000.
Thanks, Andrew.
It would save everyone a lot of time.
I want to clarify. My point of Mr. Mazzolino having to do the walkway himself didn't mean that he shouldn't do it. It was the idea that I feel that he is responsible for the walkway, and right, rather than being a heritage piece, I could see the steps, the front sort of porch steps. I could see that being an architectural feature, but not the other. So I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done. It definitely should be done, but I don't know that it would fall under ours. are.
No, agreed, and I would agree that you can't really represent them as an architectural feature of the house, but from the standpoint of the district plan, the character of the district, I do think you can make an argument. And in the case of this street in particular, if it was the only house in the street with this configuration in terms of walkways, I think it would be harder to justify. So for me, that was enough to say that I would support the application as is, but if I also think that if the committee is not comfortable with that, then you know, as I said, rather than have to everyone jump through hoops one more round, we're not talking about a significant difference here between 5,000 and 3,500. So in terms of the scope of the project. So I would say if that's the way people are leaning, why don't we, someone make that motion, we'll go with that and we'll vote on that instead of the whole.
I think I could support that. James, should we go ahead and make a motion then for that?
Sure.
Or?
I just wanted to respond to Andrew's question. So
Sure.
walkways are not covered, or you don't require a heritage permit, or at least it's not outlined in the plan or in the kind of list of items that require permits. So I've never had anybody come to me asking to change their walkway and requiring a heritage permit for it before in any heritage district in the city. And I imagine people are changing their walkways and whatnot sometimes, and we're just not privy to it. So, and it doesn't require a building permit, right? So in that case, I don't think there would be any need for a heritage permit in that sense. Also, in terms of the amount of funds that are provided, we can offer up to 50%, obviously up to up to a $10,000 grant. So we can offer up to 5,000, right? But the committee is able to offer less than that if it feels it's appropriate. So just because 5,000 is the maximum eligible here, it doesn't mean that you have to give 5,000. You are able to give less if that's what you feel is appropriate.
And I think we've done that before with the railway permits. David?
Oh, you're on mute,
mute.
David.
You're mute.
There. If Andrew made a motion for a partial grant, I would support that.
Okay, thank you, David, for that. So can I have a motion? And that was, James, do you want to try and pull that together?
Sure. Andrew, what was the amount that you proposed? I didn't catch that.
3,500.
3,500?
Yeah, that's a round number. It would be, 3,500 and change if you did 50% of 50%. So just a touch over 3,500.
I will. So this is now up on the screen, hopefully. So that the SCHAC approves the Heritage Property Grant application in the amount of $3,500 for 3 to 5 College Street. Is there anything that you'd like added to that, or is that okay?
Do we need to specify what it's for or not?
We can if we'd like. Yep.
I think that what that motion does is at least specifies what we're seeing as the heritage or the architectural part. Gail, did you have a comment before we have our vote?
I see it going in there. I was going to say I would like to see the stairs.
Yes, yeah.
Specified. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So does that work for you, Andrew, as the one making the motion, that the SCHAC approves the Heritage Property Grant application in the amount of $3,500 for 3 to 5 College Street for repairs to the stairs in front of the front porch? That's a little bit of a mouthful, but
yeah. Did Andrew say that he wanted to make the motion? We don't want to put words in his mouth.
No,
Andrew?
No, I'm happy to do so.
He threw the idea out there, so
yes, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, all in favor?
Okay, that looks like it
Thank
passes.
you very much. And thank you, Mr. Mazzolino, for that presentation. Much appreciated.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Michael, I'll be in touch tomorrow about next steps.
Thank you kindly.
We would love to see a picture once it's done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And if you want to add to the note, I personally love the wrought iron steel railings. There's 4 of them, so they'll be reinstated. They'll be that won't change because I think that's crucial to the building as well. And happy to have you note that as a condition or requirement.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Very interesting to find out about the house.
Absolutely. I'll do a drive-by and I'll send over the I think they look similar, but I'll send it over. I'll let you decide.
Okay. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So James and committee, our next presentation is item 7.3, which is the Zion Baptist Church plaque. Brandy Rivard and Dennis Dawson are here from the church to speak about the potential for a plaque to commemorate the church's history. Do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, hi. I'm Brandy Rivard, as you know, and I am here to get a plaque for the Zion Baptist Church. And I wrote a little something here. It says, in 1838, Elder Washington Christian founded the Zion Baptist Church at 82 Geneva Street. That was the old building. The Zion Baptist Church was first opened for services.
What?
I don't understand that.
1844.
In 1844.
Just read what's there.
In 1860 to 1862, that's when Anthony Burns was there. On the first pastors was Anthony Burns, who preached there for approximately 2 years before he died in 1862. Example, more information about Anthony Burns. There is a plaque at Victoria Lawn Cemetery that tells about his life. Since the Zion Baptists carried on their services until 1927, which the doors were shut at that time. In 1955, one of the members of the Zion Baptist Church donated her home so the church could continue its services, and that's Isabel Williams. We have the deed and all that for it, which was at 25 Raymond Street. The original site at 82 Geneva Street was demolished. You didn't put a date on?
1958. I mean, 1958.
1958, it was demolished. Services at the Zion Baptist Church have been going on to this present time, which is 2023.
Located at 25 Raymond Street.
Located at 25 Raymond Street, which would make this the 185th anniversary for this year. So we are gathered here today to receive a plaque for the Zion Baptist Church. And that's all that I was able to write down.
Pictures.
Okay. I have pictures.
Okay.
I have a lot of history on it. It was just kind of put together like that.
Okay, can I chime in?
Yeah, Dennis, if you'd like to. I was also going to share a photo of the original church in case everybody wasn't aware. I was able to, because our museum actually wrote a nice article about the church a couple years ago. So this is the church as it looked on Geneva Street. This was in 1955, just before it was demolished. It looked like it was in rough shape with a lot of broken windows and whatnot. And today this is now just an empty lot. There's nothing that replaced it as far as I'm aware. And then next door, or sorry, not next door. Sorry, this is the site of the current home that's being used as the church on Raymond Street downtown. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yep.
Hey, thank you, James.
Hey, not a problem at all. Hi, my name's Dennis Dawson. Hello to the committee. Good afternoon. I suppose everybody can hear me?
yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. I have to apologize. I have no idea why the camera's not working. But and just to give you a little background, our Zion Baptist Church, like many other churches right now, is a problem with having a congregation. We're in the throes of probably closing in the new year. And during one of our meetings that we were discussing what we can do to try to support the church, the plaque idea came up, and kind of wondered why maybe something hadn't been done before. Anthony Burns and the BME and a lot of the Black history, Pure Point, it's in the forefront. And so we kind of wondered what had happened with the Zion Baptist Church. And Brandy decided to take that challenge on, and she came into it and decided to find out what she could as far as getting a plaque, something to commemorate the location of the original church. Now, the original church, with its connection to Anthony Burns as the pastor and to its proximity to the BME church, the two churches were very close together. made us think that there was be some type of possibility that a plaque could be provided for the original site on Geneva Street, so that people that came to visit Victoria Lawn Cemetery to see the grave of Anthony Burns, or came to the BME, could also include in their trip to the Niagara Freedom Trail to have that included. I think there may be people that would be interested to see that the two churches actually were so close together. And so for the time that it was made, plus the fact that William Hamilton Merritt donated the property for the church initially to have it built. So that was kind of our impetus for trying to put something together as far as putting a plaque together. And I sort of felt that we were just missing a little piece of the history, a little piece of the heritage. I have no idea how the owners of the property would perceive it. I mean, the church was demolished in 1958, I guess it was, and nobody has done anything with that land ever since. I mean, they're trying to develop something now. They torn the building beside it down, and it's obviously they're doing something. There's the heavy equipment over there, and they're doing something. So I have no idea how they would react to that type of situation, but just felt that that was lacking, and the fact that Anthony Burns had been the pastor there, and he's such a historical figure in the United States and in Canada.
Okay.
So I don't know whether that topic has come up before or not. I mean, I know my mother was very instrumental in helping get the Anthony Burns gravesite at Victoria Lawn, as well as the plaque that they have there, and quite a bit involved with the Follow the North Star at the St. Catharines Museum, but it seemed like that had never been addressed. So it was something that came up in one of our meetings, and Brandy was great enough to follow it through, and here we are today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Brandy, and thank you, Janice. I have got two quick questions before I turn it over to anyone else. First of all, do you know who owns the property?
No, have absolutely no idea.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I do.
It was,
Oh,
you
do?
It was Isabel Williams,
The people that
and she lived in the back of the building. And when church
you're
happened-
talking about Raymond Street. Sorry, Brandy,
Yes,
but you're talking
Raymond
about
Street.
Raymond Street, and we're
I'm
talking about
Geneva
Geneva, the original
Oh.
building.
Because that's where you're proposing the plaque would go,
Yes.
right? And then my
Well,
second.
I don't see the Raymond Street location as an actual heritage building,
Oh,
but
sorry.
I mean, that's not my decision.
No, I'm talking about 82 Geneva, because
Yeah,
that's
so
where
am
you.
I.
Yes,
So am
okay,
I.
and so that's my first question, and my second is, what would you want this plaque affixed to?
Uh,
actually, we were thinking about the plaque being at 25 Raymond Street, and I guess the people that own the 25 Raymond Street are the members of the Zion Baptist Church. The property is owned by the members.
Well, I believe the property is probably owned by the association, the Baptist Association. So
And
if the church closes, they're no doubt going to have to deal with it.
Okay, so who was speaking there? That someone else at your end, Dennis?
It was Brandy and Henry.
Oh, okay. And then, so I want to just clarify, because I'm sort of mixed up then. At first, I thought you said you were proposing it for the original site on Geneva.
I feel 25 Raymond Street, but I don't know how this exactly works, but I don't know if it's like one plaque or if it's two locations, or I don't know. But
this is Dennis here. I'm not entirely sure what the criteria is for the plaques and for the location of the plaque, if that was to come to fruition. So if there was something that could be done, that it could be at 25 Raymond, but 25 Raymond isn't the original location of the church, and that's not where Anthony Burns was the pastor. So from a heritage point of view, you would feel that the Geneva Street location would be the best. Plus, I said the proximity to the BME church as well. But I would assume that has would be part of what the Heritage Committee does, determine where the location, or what location, if they were to have a plaque, would be the best.
Okay, well, we have a question from Gail. Gail, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, I think the Raymond Street location should not have a plaque for the simple reason of where it is. And tourists who would be going to the BME church would not be going past that in any way. And since there seems to be some consideration that the congregation will cease to exist, I think the only place, if we even consider this, would be on the Geneva Street location. And the question is, if it's just an empty lot, how do you put a plaque up?
Right.
That's
That was why I was asking what would be affixed to.
Yes.
This was part of my initial concern as to what you do with people that are dealing when you're dealing with private individuals, whether they would accept a plaque. I think James had suggested when I talked to him that, that they could be approached and maybe they would be fine with having it on their property. Then again, maybe they would be opposed to it. But I guess that's something that you wouldn't know until you actually ask.
Right. It sounds like we need a bit of investigation here before we can move forward with this.
So through the chair, yeah. So the issue is, yeah, if the plaque were to go on to the site at 82 Geneva, there is a separate property owner owns that, obviously, and they may have plans to develop that site, or we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. We would have to engage them and find out if they were amenable to that idea. There isn't really any sort of public right-of-way there beyond the sidewalk, because Geneva, the nature of Geneva Street at that point is it's basically road, then sidewalk, then property. There isn't really a boulevard to work with or anything there either. So yeah, we would have to reach out to the owner and find out if they would be interested in that. The site on Raymond Street, because the church owns that property, might be the easiest site in terms of commemorate, because that site, if I'm not mistaken, has been the church site for the last 60 years. That is part of the history of that church. So you could tell the whole story on that location. I think that even though the church, it sounds like, may discontinue at the end of this year, there's still a story at that building to be told. And obviously, I'm not sure what's happening in terms of selling the property or anything like that, but that can be arranged in terms of an agreement to ensure that the future owner would be willing to retain the plaque on the property as well. So there's different options. I guess this is sort of a conversation, but I think for now some of the information we need to do some investigating. But I think in principle, is this an item that the committee be willing to support in terms of telling this story, and then staff, I mean myself, would be able to facilitate trying to figure out a location and trying to discuss potential spots with the owner,
as well as costs.
Well, that would be the other thing, right? So we would, right now, the motion that I have crafted states that the cost would be be determined, obviously, because we don't have a quote in front of us at this moment. This is kind of, it seems like, the first step in a multi-phase kind of project. So it's more so, should you should the committee be interested in this type of project, then we can do the legwork to figure out logistics. But we kind of need that direction first, right? Because if this is a project that the committee didn't feel was appropriate to spend their funds on, then there's no point in us kind of doing that legwork, I guess. So.
Okay, I have another question. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew.
I was going to say, in principle, I think this is a very significant piece of local history that should be recognized in some way. And given the configuration of Geneva Street, it may require the participation of the landowners, of the property owners. Hopefully there is something going on there. And so we've had cases where people are very happy to incorporate something like that into their plans. It's sort of an added value feature to most properties. And for them to be able to say this is a site that comes with some history and importance is most people would consider that as a plus. So in principle, I would say it's especially important to recognize sites and communities that have been underrepresented, and this is an example of that. So I would encourage us to move it to the next step and investigate the possibilities. And it may take some time to see what happens with the plans for that site, what the plans the owner has, but as it unfolds, to incorporate it at the appropriate time would be very desirable in my opinion.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any other comments or questions?
Yes, I was thinking like of the plaque being at 25 Raymond Street, since the history starts at Geneva Street and it's continuing to this date at 25 Raymond Street, which is like 185 years of, like service of the Zion Baptist Church
And
from start to the bottom.
Sorry. And 82 Geneva Street, when it was demolished, the members went to the Salem Church, the BME Church, and 25 Raymond Street as well.
I'd just like to say I agree with Andrew. I think it's a significant significant piece of the history of St. Catharines that's been overlooked.
Thank you, Dennis and Brandy. I think that we're probably in agreement that it's a significant history. It's what we can do for the next steps. And then, so my last question was, James, if we look at our budget for commemorations, and if we say that this is something that needs to be investigated, when would if we agreed, when would we actually be spending the money? Would it be in this budget, if there is any budget left, or would it be in a future budget? Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, it would be 2024. We don't have any funds left for 2023. And so yeah, it would be a 2024 project. We don't have any other projects kind of on tap right now for that commemoration fund. So it's something, if another project were to emerge, we can consider that obviously in the future. But given this is the only one that we have kind of in front of us right now, we could have kind of insert it as a placeholder and allocate some funds to it. We know how much a plaque costs on previous projects, but it's hard to guess in terms of the cost of everything is inflated, right, in prices lately. So it's a little challenging to be able to kind of earmark a certain amount of funds. But if we decided as a group, or if you decided as a group that you wanted to pursue this, then we can kind of make sure that it's always at kind of the back of our mind if another project were to come forward.
And so would the wording be investigate then?
Sure. Yeah, that would be appropriate.
Okay. Is anyone willing to make a motion?
All right, well, quick question. Is there any mechanism to engage with the property owner and just say this is our interest and is this consistent with the plans for the site? Because there's no point even in doing it in 2024 if it's going to turn into a construction zone in 2025. It's when
we have no plans of demolishing or anything. We'd like to carry on the service for many, many more years, right? We have our present pastor that's there. He's been preaching there since 1998, and we still have the same pastor there now, right now.
And he's 92.
So, sorry, I meant the Geneva site in particular, but I think that would be for commemoration. That would be the priority. But
yeah, so through the chair, we can reach out to the owner. Whether or not they'd be amenable to the idea, I'm not sure. But it's certainly something we could do. If the property were to, let's say, change hands in the future and a development plan came forward, as part of usually if a planning application comes in, we have a pre-consultation. So we meet with the owner and talk about all the planning issues related to the site. We'd be able to bring this up as a potential inclusion in their property, in their plans. So we could tell them about the history of the property and say, the Heritage Committee has expressed interest in putting a plaque on this site, and ask them if they would be amenable to it at that time. But the first step obviously would be to reach out to the current owner and find out if they would be open to the idea. That will take some time to figure that out.
I just did a quick Google search and it looks like it's located beside Storm. Is it the empty lot where the encampments have been?
No,
it's to the right of it.
No,
it's the house right there. It's not the empty lot, it's the house.
And
the owner are the members of the Zion Baptist Church. That's how it's written out in the deed. So if the Zion Baptist Church,
Henry, you're back at 25 Raymond Street.
Yeah, we're talking about our preferred location, which is the 82
Geneva Street. Forget about Raymond Street, Henry.
So I just did a quick Google search, as I said, and it's right beside Storm. And I know that Storm has had some issues with the landowner of the property beside where
Yes.
there has been encampments. And so they've been dealing with that and the police and etc. So not to get into that too much, but I think that Storm themselves as being very community minded, we could even maybe mention something that we could investigate them. I know it wouldn't exactly be on the lot, but it would be right beside the lot. And as I said, Storm is very, very community minded.
I see where you're
I
going.
know
Yeah.
there's, as I yeah. So that's always a possibility when we go to investigate. So while the owner of that lot may not be, and who knows, may not be that amenable, we do have the people on either side of that lot that we could consider. I know it's a bit of a
Yes.
stretch, but
I think that something's happening because there is a house demolished last week next to the empty lot on Geneva. So I don't know if there's going to be something building going up.
maybe. So I know they've had, like I said, they've had problems with encampments on that lot. It's been empty for a while. So maybe they are building something on that empty lot plus where they've demolished before. Anyways, I'm just speculating, so it's probably not a great thing to do, but I thought I would mention that there's still more possibilities than the lot.
Is there any plaque at the St. Catharines Museum on your church?
No, nothing at the St. Catharines Museum. The real only connection as far as plaques go would be at the Victoria Lawn Cemetery, and that would be with Anthony Burns. I assume that you're familiar with Anthony Burns. Maybe there's obviously some head nodding going on. So I would imagine that you have some idea who and what he had accomplished here in St. Catharines.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are we at a stage where we could make a motion? Do we need to make a motion, James, saying that we could investigate or consider it as a possibility if the committee's even accepting of that?
Through the chair, I'm just trying to craft something right now. So if you bear with me for about 10 more seconds, I'll see what I can come up with.
May I say a question?
Sure.
My concerns are what can be done at 25 Raymond Street, since we're still continuing the Zion Baptist from 1838 to 2023, right? Like
Henry, nothing's going to happen at
original
Raymond
church.
Street.
Excuse me.
Nothing's going to happen at Raymond Street as far as the Heritage Committee is concerned.
I don't know, Dennis. That's why I'm asking them. So basically, like, since it was established in 1838 and it's still going on now as 2023. Yes, the original building was demolished and tore down. A lady left her house, right, and designated to the members of the Zion Baptist Church to continue their service, right? The house is owned on 25 Raymond Street by the members of the Zion Baptist Church. They're the ones that own the deed. And that anytime we choose the service, the church to cease, then we have to give up the deed. But until then, like, the members own the church at 25 Raymond Street, the members of the Zion Baptist Church.
I can send them a photocopy.
James, I'm just wondering if maybe we should sort of put this on the back burner without a motion even, and let the group decide what they're asking us for. Maybe they need to come to some
Henry,
agreement.
you're confusing everything. It's not 25 Raymond Street is not a heritage building. You're confusing things. The original site at Geneva Street is what we're talking about, and today was, as James said, it's like an investigative if there was a possibility that something could go forward, so that Anthony Burns could be recognized. So the original a church for the Zion Baptist Church, the site of the Zion Baptist Church, could be recognized. And it's, again, I say the proximity to the BME, and that the two churches existed so close together and were built at that time by the slaves, and obviously with help from one of the other local churches. And the fact that William Hamilton Merritt, we've been through that already. So Raymond Street just really doesn't fit the criteria. No matter who owns it or what, it just doesn't fit the criteria. I'm sure that the Heritage committee is understand, well, they obviously understand. So I think we're a bit off track. I think 82 Geneva Street is what we're really talking about here. It's nice that you're putting in your 2 cents worth, but I think we're getting off topic.
Through the chair as well, just to be mindful. So the Heritage Committee has a limited amount of funds available to them every year for plaques, and other projects do come up. And so to allocate 2 plaques to this project, one on Geneva Street and one on Raymond, might not be might not be possible. So I think if the focus could be on a Geneva Street site, I think that it sounds like that would be preferable for the committee and at least for Mr. Dawson. And so I've crafted a a very wordy motion, which I think would work for today. But I think this is the first step in a longer discussion. So I imagine it'll be something we come back to once we have more information from the owner and whatnot.
And you know what, James, maybe this should go to the plaquing subcommittee.
Well, I think through the chair, I think it would eventually go back there because I think the plaquing subcommittee would be the one that would do the research and help compile the text and the images for the plaque. But I think first we need to figure out whether we can even get this ball rolling. Because if we don't have a site for the plaque, I don't think we want to generate a plaque quite yet. I think we'd want to make sure that we can line something up. And I think, I think that's the best path forward. So I'll put the motion up on the screen, and I apologize that my motions today are a little wordier than normal, but that the SDHAC pursue the creation of a plaque in 2024 for the Zion Baptist Church at 82 Geneva Street with the intention of earmarking funds from its 2024 commemoration budget towards the project, cost to be determined, dependent upon staff investigating whether the owner would be amenable to a plaque on the property. So I realize that's a long sentence, but does that kind of encapsulate, I think, what we're getting at? Gail?
Yes. I'm simply saying yes.
Okay.
You've clarified it. Thank you.
So would somebody like to make that motion then?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
And so we just need a vote then on the motion?
Right.
All in favor? Okay, looks like it's passed. So I'll do some legwork on my end. It might take some time to get that done, but we'll see what we can do. And I'll be in touch, Dennis and Brandy, and we might have you out to the committee again sometime soon, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your time today. And it's something that we said it was investigative, and I'm glad to see we got a unanimous. It's very, very nice that we can at least go forward and look at the possibility.
Okay, thank you.
And I like the idea about storm as well, because they may be quite willing. You know, if it's over a couple of feet, hey, that's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean that's purely speculative.
Yeah, but that's a good idea.
Possibility.
It's a great idea.
Okay, well, thank you, Dennis and Brandy, for your presentation and for all of the information about the Zion Church. Henry, is that your hand?
Yes. I have one more question. Is there anything that can be done with the property on 25 Raymond Street?
Like
The Zion Baptist Church that's going on now. That's like, we did bring this application on behalf of the Zion Baptist Church at 25 Raymond Street to save its church, right? The other churches, like I said, we're aware that it's been torn down and that, right? But as history moves on, my main concerns is 25 Raymond Street, which is active right now, and to continue the services and everything going on. So that's what, like me and Dennis got a little bit of wrong, where I'm talking about 25 Raymond. He's talking about
I don't have anything.
He's talking about, excuse me, 1 minute, Dennis. He's talking about just a plaque at 82 Geneva Street, which does not do anything for what's going on present day. Like what I'm trying to say is 25 Raymond Street, the church, did start back in 1800s, and it's still continuing now, right? Like even, I have a small picture here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but even like before the old original church, and then the one on 25 Raymond Street. We also
Yeah,
have
James has already put those
We
two
have a whole
pictures up.
bunch of news clippings. That's the
Understood.
pastor in Marjorie, that ran the church.
Okay, well, thank you very
Okay.
much for that. I think that as a Heritage Advisory Committee, we're looking at the original site, and certainly if you wanted to put a plaque up at the other location, you probably could, but as a Heritage Advisory Committee, I think we're looking at the original site. Andrew, did you want to weigh in on this?
No, I was just going to say I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, and I think it's more important to celebrate the congregation and the community than it is to celebrate the building. However, the Geneva Street location is the natural place for it as the historic site, and also just because of traffic. I mean, the other location has very little traffic whatsoever, so less is accomplished. So I think if we get to a point where all of the possibilities of commemorating the Geneva Street site are exhausted, maybe we could revisit it then. But I think also too, there's other ways to recognize the history of the congregation and of the community. And if you have some documentation and so on there, and any records that you have within the congregation, I recommend you reach out to the library. And I'm sorry, the museum. They're very good at participating in projects like that, and also they may have information that you would like to see as well. So I would connect with them. There's a lot that can be done outside of putting up a plaque, and I definitely think there is a greater awareness and recognition due here. So I would encourage the congregation to pursue that, and let's I think everyone's pretty serious about looking at the possibilities of commemoration at some point. So it may take some time to see how it plays out, but I think we're on your side here.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Andrew. Well explained.
Great. Well, thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Brandy. And sorry, I didn't catch the other gentleman's name, but thanks for coming out, and we'll be in touch. I'll let you know about the progress that I'm making on my end.
Okay, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, next up is an update on the Ollie Fountain. James, I'm going to hand it over to you for that.
Yep. So through the chair, and Brandy and Dennis, you're welcome to go if you'd like. You're welcome to also stay if you'd like as well, but I just wanted to let you know.
It's pronounced oil, just like oil, like
Texas. So oil. Sorry,
oil fountain.
Well,
sorry.
I'm glad Gail made the correction before I said it, because I was definitely going to say oily. So, so the oil fountain. So there was some discussion a couple months ago about whether or not the committee could provide funds to go towards the oil fountain, the commemoration, or not commemoration, the restoration work on it, because the urn had been stolen and then retrieved, and unfortunately it wasn't in a good state. So, and at the time I kind of referenced that the funds that we had available to us, which was only about $1,000, would not really cover much of that restoration work. So I'm now able to kind of provide a little bit more context and a little bit more information on that. So essentially, in the 2024 budget, there's going to be a line item for restoration of the fountain. The line item's for almost $50,000. It's for $46,650 plus HST, so rounding around $50,000. Essentially, the proposal is to restore and rebuild the urn. It was the one that was vandalized was actually from 2003. It wasn't original. But the goal is to restore that. And then apparently there was also a large chipping of one of the decorative lion heads on the fountain. And that is going to be restructured as well. So there's two kind of projects in one that are being done here. The fountain is made from limestone, and the plan is to use Indiana limestone to repair it and make sure that it's back to the condition that it should be in. So this is a line item in the 2024 budget, and the project will hopefully start some point in 2024. So that's kind of why $1,000 wasn't going to get us very far, because the amount of work that needs to be done and the expertise that's required to do it is costly. So just wanted to explain that to everybody. Gail?
You said $50,000?
Yeah,
50?
so the
Just
quote that
just for that vase and it's lighted and
so it's the cost to replace the urn and the repair the lion. So the lion has a large
wow.
chip in it as well.
I guess I'm
And so
surprised. I just didn't realize it would be anything like that.
yeah, sorry, excuse me. Uh there's a heritage restoration specialist company that's been brought on board to do this type of work. And anytime you deal with any sort of heritage restoration work and the expertise that's required for that, it does cost money, unfortunately. And
Okay.
so you are paying a premium for that type of craftsmanship. And yeah, so it'll be restored. It'll be back in place. Hopefully by this time next year, you'll see it in there. And also the other damage that was done to the fountain, the large chip that happened to the line, that should be repaired as well. So it should look good as new, hopefully by this time next year.
Well, thank you for following through on that. And there are no charges being laid for the vandalization or anything that
Through the chair, I'm not aware of any. I'm not sure if they found the person that did it. They
Right.
obviously found the urn, but it might have just been dumped somewhere and then
Yeah,
retrieved.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't know if they know who did it, but
Very
at the very
sad.
least, we were
Yeah.
able to retrieve it and find it, and there's a plan going forward to repair
Okay.
it.
Thank you so much, James, for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, James. Any other questions for James?
Oh, I have a question.
Oil
I have a
fountain?
question. I have a
Holly?
question, Holly. Instead of spending all that money, did they ever look into maybe a reproduction, like something from like a Jansen's place warehouse, a big, giant, heavy duty, oversized, like a big black wrought iron urn, like super heavy, so no one could ever tip it over or steal it?
Through the chair,
Can I just
go
comment
ahead,
that I mentioned, I wanted that mentioned. I did mention that at the last meeting, and I wondered if maybe Mark Hurt, however you pronounce his last name, might know somebody who could do a replication of it. Yeah, I have the same question, Holly. Yeah, essentially. Yeah, I agree.
So through the chair, sorry, excuse me. I wasn't part of the kind of sourcing of the craftsmen that they're using and the company that they're using. So I don't know what process was gone through in terms of determining who they've brought on board and what other materials or options were thrown out there. I think the goal though was to restore what was there. And so if that's the case, then you want to always replace things in kind in terms of materials and in terms of the look, right? So I think that would been providing the most guidance, I think. And obviously it's a designated structure. And I don't have the reasons for designation in front of me at the moment, but the reasons for designation likely refer to how it looked. So I think it makes sense from a best practices in heritage restoration to try to restore it to the way it previously looked.
Okay, thanks, James. Any other questions or comments? Do we need a motion to receive the report from James on the oil fountain?
Yeah, we can do that.
Anybody willing to?
I'll do it again if you don't mind.
Oh, I've got Robert.
Oh, no, Robert. Let Robert.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Robert. Okay.
So I guess we just need a quick vote on that.
Okay. Oh, so you don't want to show us it would just be the motion to receive it?
Yeah, okay. I don't have anything typed up. It's just a
okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. James, do we move over to business now, or do we add the little piece about the task force?
I think we could do your task force if you'd like right now. We could add that as 7.5 here.
Sure. And this is just a very brief report about the 2029 Welland Canal Task Force, looking at the commemoration interpretation of the Welland Canal. We received at our last meeting, we received the Welland Canal Interpretive Plan with some suggestions, summarizing all the things that we had done, giving a little bit of a history of the Welland Canal, and suggesting that perhaps we call it the Welland Canal Corridor to incorporate the trails and the Welland Canal systems in St. Catharines. Now, that report also gave a summary of some of the things that we had done. As a group, we had met and talked about the scope of the project. We've had walking tours. We've looked at the mapping of the canal, done some inventories and some research as well about the canal, thought about the big vision at the end, identified who would be or could be engaged as part of the project. And then Kathleen and her committee took all of the suggestions that we had made and put them together into the Welland Canal Interpretive Plan. And that interpretive plan is going forward to City Council. They had thought it would probably be about 4 to 6 weeks before it would go through. And the interpretive plan, as I said, has lots of detail in it. And it details suggestions for the commemoration plus going on past 2029, and these all fall under several themes. So my recommendation to James was that we have Kathleen Powell come and give us a short presentation. Once it's been approved by City Council, that the members of this committee would be really interested in having some more detail, in a brief presentation about the interpretive plan and some of the suggested activities and steps to celebrate the Welland Canal and its anniversary. And I should mention, just before I give the floor to question, is it actually looks at several dates for the Welland Canal. So it also includes 2024 as a significant date in the Welland Canal, as well as 2029. And so it's a great plan. Kathleen and team did a great job of putting together that information, and I know that you would be really thrilled with it. But I want you to hear about it from Kathleen herself. Any questions about that? So I think James has reached out to Kathleen. Oh, sorry, Robert, you have a question? Comment?
Well, if you don't mind, through Madam Chair, was it ever resolved to deal with all the canals rather than 1 and 2 only?
It was originally the plan was to deal with 1 and 2, and
Right.
then and that was approved by the committee or agreed upon by the committee. And then a little bit later, there's a reconsideration of that, and it now includes the first, the second, and the third Welland Canal.
That's wonderful news. Thank you.
Oh, good. Oh, you're welcome. So James, I think you've reached out to Kathleen.
Yeah, through the chair, I reached out to Kathleen, and she suggested that it might be a little premature to come out to the committee, but it sounds like she's willing to come out eventually. So hopefully sometime in 2024, she'll be in front of the committee.
That'd be terrific. And I think, and as I said, I know you're going to be really interested in the report and the suggestions to honor a really memorable piece of our history, of our local history. Okay. So, okay to move on then, James?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. 8 is business arising from the minutes, and we have no business that I can see. And then the next one is the updates from the subcommittee.
Yeah, so we didn't have a subcommittee meeting this month. Our subcommittee, the designation project or prioritization project, we're going to be meeting next week, next Friday. So just a reminder to the members that are on that subcommittee, it'll be on Friday the 8th. We had to move it up a week because I'm away the following week. So that project is starting to kind of wrap up, and hopefully we'll have a prioritization, kind of a ranking to show come back to the main committee with early next year. Hopefully in January we'll be able to do that. So yeah.
Well, we look forward to hearing that. Any questions for James about the designation committee or anyone on the committee? Any questions? No? Okay, I think we're at the date of the next meeting. Am I being premature and moving us to that, or?
No, I think that's where we are. Yeah.
Okay, so I have that the date of the next meeting is December 21st, and that we moved it up from the typical time, obviously, because of the holiday. Does that still work, December 21st?
No, I thought it was, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Gail. What did
okay, it is the 21st. Yes, you're right.
21st, okay. Yeah, that's what I have, so.
Yeah, my
All
little
set.
old calendar here, I've confused
Oh.
myself. Which happens quite often, actually.
And I realize that it's always tough the week before Christmas time. So if you can't make it, please give me a heads up, because obviously we'll have to make sure there's quorum. And if it doesn't look like we're going to have quorum, we can always move the meeting to the first week of January. That's not a problem either. I mean, it's only 3 weeks from now, so our agenda might be rather short anyways. So moving it to January is not a problem. But yeah, if you could give me a heads up about whether you can attend or not, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. And then now I think we need a motion to adjourn. Anyone willing to make the motion to adjourn? Maria, is that your hand up, Maria? Okay, so all in favor?
Okay,
Did a
great.
good
Well,
job, Madam Vice Chair. Very well done.
Brian does
Lorraine.
not get sick very often, let me tell you. So this is an exciting time for me. Poor Brian. I know I don't want him to be sick, but I love it.
I'll bet he's watching in and from his bed.
Well, he does it much better, but I do find it fun.
He's on YouTube. You're going to get a critique by email in about 15 minutes.
Probably will. Take care, everyone. See you in December.
Yep. Thanks all. Take care.
Bye now.